Today I want to talk about Jefferson's quality of building. Sometimes Jefferson did things better than you had to. And one example is putting the plaster and the trim on the walls. So typically you could plaster right onto a brick wall with nothing else, and the plaster would hold on to it very well. The problem was this wall that looks flat might be 1 or 2 or 3 inches out of plumb. And Jefferson was very particular about getting things precise. And so when the bricklayer was building this wall, he put these small, very small nailing blocks in between the head joints of the brick courses. So down at the bottom for the base, here for the chair rail, at the top for entablatures, around every door and window opening, wherever there was going to be wood trim, the bricklayer knew to put this nailing block in a particular place. And the purpose of that was to be a very small target for the carpenter, whose job it was to put what was called a plaster ground onto all the walls where the trim would be. In this case, the plaster ground is on this wood stud wall, but the same very plain board was put on the brick walls, and its job was to be perfectly plumb. And the same thing on the ceiling, there'd be a board whose job it was to be perfectly level. So once these boards were on the wall, and there's even an instance when Jefferson came and measured them and told John Perry, the carpenter, that he had to redo them in the parlor because they weren't plumb. Once these are on the wall, then they're used for the plasterer to get the plaster very plumb and straight on the wall. Same thing on the ceiling. And then finally, the finished joiner would put the trim onto this as a nailing block. The other way to do this, which was more typical, was to put your trim on the wall first and then just plaster to it. Jefferson, being very precise, wanted everything very plumb and straight, and it was an extra step in the process, which meant it cost more money, but he was all about precision in this house where every detail mattered. So once you just looked at the finished plaster wall and its trim, you really had no idea how much went into that. But these are things that we recreated in putting all the plaster and trim on the house walls. So this is just another example of Jefferson doing things a little better than he had to.